Hey guys, it's Katie at scrappingkatie.ctmh.com, and I have a quick card process to show you using some new thin cuts. How gorgeous are all these stitches from the thin cut stitched flowers. Put this quick card together and you can see how easy it is using the stitched flower thin cuts from Close to My Heart. So I'm going to start with a peach cardstock base, and I've cut that to 6 by 12. And then I'm going to pull out some B&T from the World Is Yours special for May 2019 and cut off the zip strip of that, as well as pull another zip strip or two and some scratch pieces that I may use later on. I also am going to take this peach foliage B&T and cut out some stitched flowers from the stitched flower thin cut. And I'm unsure what flower type I want to use, I guess you would say. And so I just cut a whole bunch, as well as some leaves from Into the Wild B&T and then some flower centers. I've scored that peach cardstock at 6 inches off camera and then folded that up, and then I'm going to just start laying some things out. I knew I wanted to use this vellum somewhere, so I'm going to cut that zip strip off. Originally, I wanted it to be the entire back, but that pattern of that vellum is just a little bit too much for the foliage of that B&T that I already have down. So right here, I am just folding along those stitch lines on this particular flower pattern. Again, at this point, I'm unsure which flower pattern I'm going to use, but I'm just folding along there, and you can either do valleys or mountains. It doesn't matter. And then I decide that I actually want a flower out of vellum. So I end up using the daisy pattern, and I cut 2 of those. And along those stitch lines, every other one I'm just cutting with my micro tip scissors. And then the petals that I did not cut, I'm going to end up folding. And so as you can see here, it just creates some dimension. So I'm going to do that on both of these vellum flowers. And then play around with those 2 layers as on top of and underneath that particular flower pattern. I end up not going with it. The B&T is just too busy. And so I briefly thought that maybe I would just do vellum, and then I decided, nope, I'm going to pull that daisy B&T as well. So I'm going to adhere these 3 layers using liquid glass. I've got vellum on the bottom, then that B&T, and then vellum on the top, and I'm just offsetting those petals so they just don't line up perfectly, and using my mini stapler to secure them in the center. And then I'm going to apply a thin 3D foam circle to the center of that flower and kind of rough up the edges a little bit. So now I'm going to adhere down those card base pieces. And as you can see here, I've decided to put that foliage down at the bottom left instead of the bottom right like I've had it. And then adhere down this zip strip and then cut off the excess. And then I'm going to try to pull out some stamp sets and decide what I want to do in that top right corner. I just think it needs something. And so I originally pull out this stamp set, which is new, and decide not to go with that one. And then so I decided to use the May 2019 stamp of the month called To My Bestie. So I've pulled out Celebrate, It's Your Day for the sentiment, and then a fun scallop that comes with that stamp of the month. And I'm going to use it in that top right corner. I think that foliage anchors that bottom left, and I just think that that top right needs something. So I've masked off my card base with just a scratch piece of B&T. So when I ink up the scallop, it does not get on that cardstock. And then I'm going to ink up my sentiment. So I inked up Celebrate in espresso ink and It's Your Day in sage. And now I'm taking one of the tiny stamp images from the stamp of the month and inking it up in mint and just random stamping in between those leaves. And then I'm going to start laying everything down. I've already folded those leaves on that stitch, and then trying out a couple of zip strips, and I decided to go with this gray one. It's called Mink, with a tiny arrow. So I adhered down that circle that was left over from the shaker card that I did a couple of days ago, and now I'm just taking some silver embellishing thread and wrapping it around a few fingers, and I'm going to put that behind the flower. And I just kind of depends on how big I want it, how many fingers I wrap around. As you can tell from this finished card, I decided to add a piece of mint cardstock behind that flower center and some retired opaques. I just love how much dimension these stitched flower thin cuts add, especially on those leaves, and then the softness of the added vellum. Thank you so much for stopping by, and make sure you look at the links in the description to find out where you can get these awesome products.